The alarm bells rang through the bridge of the Kethfor, raider ship Blood Fang. Captain Zextel's 4 eyes focused on the scanner display, his scaled fingers drumming against the command chair. After 30 years of piracy in the outer spiral, he knew a perfect target when he saw one. "Sir, we have a single ship on approach vector 77 Alpha," reported his second-in-command, a thin Velaryon named Skix. "Energy signature is minimal. Hull design appears to be human origin." Zexthel's mouth opened in what his species considered a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. Humans, the newest species to join the galactic community, barely 200 years since first contact. Their technology was primitive compared to the ancient civilizations that ruled the galaxy. Their ships were slow, their weapons outdated, and their crews inexperienced in real combat. "What type of vessel?" Zextel asked, though he already suspected. The answer: cargo hauler, sir. The Resolute Dawn. Registry shows it's carrying mining equipment to the Tertius colonies. Perfect. Mining equipment meant valuable metals and rare elements. The kind of cargo that sold well on the black markets of the Rim worlds. Zextel had raided dozens of human ships over the past 5 years. They always surrendered quickly. Humans were weak, scared creatures who valued their lives more than their cargo. "How many escort ships?" he asked. "None, sir. She's running alone." Even better. A lone cargo ship in the dangerous outer spiral was practically begging to be robbed. Zextel wondered if humans would ever learn to travel in convoy like the other species did. Probably not. They were too arrogant, thinking their status as a protected developing species would keep them safe. "Signal the pack," Zextel ordered. All ships moved to intercept positions. Standard raid formation. The Blood Fang was the flagship of a 5-ship raiding pack. 2 fast attack vessels, 2 boarding ships, and his command cruiser. More than enough firepower to handle anything the humans might throw at them. The other ships began moving into position, spreading out to surround the human vessel. On the main screen, the Resolute Dawn grew larger as they approached. It was typical human design, boxy, functional, with no regard for the elegant curves preferred by older galactic civilizations. The hull was dark gray metal with obvious weld marks and repair patches. Definitely a working ship, not some fancy diplomatic vessel. "Range?" Zextel asked. 50,000 kilometers in closing, sir." "Any response from the target?" "They're hailing us, sir. Standard emergency frequency." Zextel laughed, a harsh sound that made several bridge crew members step back. "Put them through. Let's see how quickly they beg." The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of the human ship. A woman sat in the captain's chair, her dark hair pulled back in a simple knot. Her uniform was clean but worn. Her face was calm, showing no sign of fear. Behind her, Zextel could see other crew members at their stations. Humans mostly, but he spotted a few aliens as well. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the merchant vessel Resolute Dawn," the woman said. Her voice was steady, professional. "You are conducting an illegal intercept in neutral space. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Zextel felt a moment of surprise. Most human captains started pleading or offering bribes immediately. This one was different. Still, it didn't matter. They all broke eventually. "I am Captain Zextel of the Kethfor Syndicate," he replied, letting his voice carry the full weight of his reputation. "Your ship and cargo now belong to us. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your vessel and the death of your crew." Captain Chun's expression didn't change. "I see. And if we surrender?" "Your crew will be transferred to escape pods and released at the nearest inhabited system. Your cargo becomes ours. It's a fair trade, your lives for your goods." The human captain seemed to consider this for a moment. She looked around her. Bridge as if consulting with her officers. Zexthil couldn't hear what they were saying, but he saw several nods and hand gestures. Finally, Chun looked back at the screen. "We need a few minutes to discuss this among the crew," she said. "Some of them are frightened. They need time to understand the situation." "You have 10 minutes," Zexthil replied. "After that, we begin shooting." The screen went dark. Zexthil turned to his crew, feeling satisfaction at how easily this was. "Going. Move to boarding positions. Prep the capture teams. This will be over soon." The 5 raider ships closed in on the Resolute Dawn. The human ship continued on its course, making no attempt to run or fight. Its engines maintained the same steady output. Its weapons remained powered down. Everything looked normal for a surrendering merchant vessel. "Sir," Skix reported, "the human ship is transmitting on several frequencies. Standard distress calls mostly. Emergency beacons, requests for assistance from any nearby vessels." "Let them," Zexthil said with amusement. "By the time help arrives, we'll be long gone with their cargo." As the minutes passed, Zexthil studied the human ship more carefully. The Resolute Dawn was larger than most cargo haulers, but that just meant more space for valuable goods. The hull showed signs of regular maintenance, which suggested the owners took good care of their investment. The engine configuration was standard human design, reliable but not particularly fast. "Time's up," Zexthil announced. "Hail them again." They. Screen activated, showing Captain Chun once more. She looked tired now, as if the weight of the situation was finally hitting her. "We've decided to surrender," she said quietly. "My crew doesn't want to die for a cargo hold full of mining equipment. We'll cooperate fully with your boarding procedures." "Wise choice," Zexthil replied. "Maintain your current course and speed. Prepare your crew for transfer to the emergency pods. Any attempt to resist or sabotage your ship will result in immediate execution." "Understood," Chun said. "We'll be ready for your boarding teams." The transmission ended. Zexthil felt the familiar rush of victory. Another successful raid, another profitable day. The human ship was now completely surrounded by his vessels, with nowhere to run even if they changed their minds. "Deploy boarding pods," he ordered. "Teams Alpha through Delta, standard seizure protocol. I want that ship secured in 30 minutes. The boarding pods launched from 2 of his ships, small armored vessels designed to attach directly to a target's hull and cut through with plasma torches. Each pod carried a squad of heavily armed pirates from various species. They had done this hundreds of times before. Zexthil watched the pods close the distance to the human ship. Everything was going perfectly. The Resolute Dawn maintained course and speed, showing no signs of resistance. Its crew was probably huddled together somewhere, waiting to be herded into escape pods. "Pods making contact with target hull," reported the boarding team leader. "Beginning cutting procedures now." On the tactical display, Zexthil could see the 5 boarding pods attached to different points along the human ship's hull. The plasma cutters were already at work, slicing through the outer armor to create entry points. In a few minutes, his teams would be inside, securing the bridge and cargo holds. "Sir," Skix said suddenly, "I'm detecting some unusual energy readings." "From the target vessel. What kind of readings?" Zexthil asked, though he wasn't particularly concerned. Human ships often had strange energy signatures. Their technology was still developing. Power fluctuations throughout the ship, almost like they're reconfiguring something. Before Zexthil could respond, Captain Chun's face appeared on the screen again. But this time she wasn't calling to surrender or beg. She was smiling. It was a cold, dangerous smile that made Zexthil's blood run cold. "Captain Zexthil," she said calmly, "I have one word for you and your crews." She paused. her smile growing wider. Pandora. The moment Captain Chun spoke the word Pandora, everything changed. The resolute dawn began to transform before Zexthel's eyes. Panels along the hull slid open with mechanical precision, revealing rows of weapon ports that had been completely hidden moments before. The dull gray cargo ship suddenly bristled with railguns, plasma cannons, and missile tubes. What had looked like repair patches were actually camouflaged armor plating that now folded back to expose military-grade firepower. Impossible, Zexthel whispered, staring at the tactical display as his ship's computers frantically updated their assessment of the human vessel. The Resolute Dawn wasn't a cargo hauler at all. It was a warship. A very well-disguised, very dangerous warship. "Sir?" Skix shouted from his station. "Energy readings are off the charts. That ship has enough firepower to destroy our entire pack." But Zexthel was more worried about his boarding teams. 5 pods full of his best pirates were now attached to the hull of what had revealed itself to be a military vessel. A trap. They had walked straight into a perfectly laid trap. "Alpha Team to command," crackled the voice of his boarding team leader over the comm. "We've breached the hull and are moving inside. This place is strange, sir. The corridors are too narrow, and there are blast doors everywhere." "Get out of there," Zexthel barked. "It's a trap. All teams abort and return to ships immediately." But it was already too late. On the human ship, Sergeant Marcus Webb crouched behind a makeshift barricade in Corridor 7. The big man's scarred face was calm as he watched his motion sensors. 30 years of military service had taught him patience. The aliens were coming, just as Captain Chun had predicted they would. "Contacts approaching from Section C and D," he whispered into his comm unit. 4 hostiles each group, armed with standard pirate gear. "Copy that, Marcus?" came Chun's voice. "Remember, we want some of them alive for questioning." "Understood, Captain. Non-lethal takedowns when possible." Webb smiled grimly. The pirates had no idea what they were walking into. The Resolute Dawn might look like a cargo ship on the outside, but inside it was a maze of defensive positions, hidden weapons, and tactical surprises. Every corridor could be sealed independently. Every room had multiple exit routes. The humans had spent months preparing for this moment. The first group of pirates rounded the corner, moving in a loose formation that would have been effective against scared civilians. Against trained soldiers, it was suicide. Webb waited until they were in the middle of the corridor, then pressed a button on his control pad. Hidden panels in the walls slid open, revealing automated defense turrets. But instead of deadly projectiles, they fired nets made of high-strength polymer fiber. The 4 pirates were tangled and brought down before they could even raise their weapons. Gas canisters dropped from the ceiling, releasing a fast-acting sedative that put them to sleep in seconds. "Section C secured," Webb reported. 4 prisoners, no casualties. Similar reports came in from around the ship as the other boarding teams were systematically captured or neutralized. The humans had turned their own vessel into a giant trap, using the aliens' expectations against them. The pirates expected to find frightened merchants. Instead, they found soldiers who knew their ship better than they knew their own names. Lieutenant Sarah Kim had positioned herself in the main cargo bay, which the pirates would certainly try to secure. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but she had earned her rank in the border wars, fighting against enemies twice her size. When the airlock cycled open and 6 pirates charged in, she was ready. The cargo bay looked normal enough. Rows of shipping containers, standard loading equipment, dim lighting. The pirates spread out to search for crew members and valuable goods. They never noticed the shipping containers were all empty, or that some of them weren't containers at all. Kim pressed her detonator. The fake containers exploded outward, not with deadly force, but with expanding foam that filled the entire bay in seconds. The pirates found themselves trapped in a substance that hardened around them like quick-setting concrete. They couldn't move, couldn't see, and could barely breathe through the emergency air filters built into the foam. "Cargo bay secured," Kim reported cheerfully. 6 more for the collection. Back on the bridge of the Bloodfang, Zexthul watched his carefully planned raid fall apart in real time. His boarding teams had gone silent one by one. The tactical display showed his pods still attached to the human ship, but there was no sign of his pirates inside. "Sir?" Skix reported with panic. In his voice, the human ship is powering up weapons. Multiple target locks on all our vessels. Evasive maneuvers. Zexthul shouted. "All ships scatter." But the human ship was already moving. The Resolute Dawn accelerated with shocking speed, far faster than any cargo hauler should have been able to move. Its hidden engines revealed their true power as the disguised warship positioned itself to block the raiders' escape routes. The first volley of human weapons fire was precise and devastating. Railgun slugs tore through the armor of the nearest raider ship, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical accuracy. The aliens weren't trying to destroy the pirate vessels. They were disabling them, leaving them helpless but alive. "Return fire," Zexthul ordered desperately. His ships opened up with everything they had. Plasma beams and missile salvos streaked toward the human vessel. But the Resolute Dawn moved like a dancer, twisting and rolling through space with impossible grace. Its point defense systems shot down incoming missiles, while its armor absorbed hits that should have crippled it. This wasn't how space combat was supposed to work. Ships were supposed to stand off at long range and exchange fire until one side's shields failed. They weren't supposed to charge straight into the enemy formation like some ancient warrior looking for hand-to-hand combat. But that's exactly what the humans were doing. The Resolute Dawn closed to knife-fighting range with Zexthul's command. "Ship." At this distance, every shot was a guaranteed hit. The human weapons began systematically dismantling the Bloodfang's combat systems. "Shields failing," Skix reported. "Engines at 30%. Weapons offline." On the main screen, Captain Chun's face appeared again. She was still calm, still professional, but there was something in her eyes that made Zexthul's blood run cold. It was the look of a predator that had finally cornered its prey. "Captain Zexthul," she said pleasantly. "I should probably introduce myself properly. I'm Captain Sarah Chun, commanding officer of the U.S. Resolute Dawn, Anti-Piracy Task Force. 7. You and your crews are under arrest for violation of Galactic Maritime Law, Section 47. Armed robbery in neutral space." "Anti-Piracy Task Force?" Zexthul repeated weakly. "That's right. We've been hunting your little group for 6 months now. Amazing how much information you can gather when you let yourselves be raided a few times. We know your patrol routes, your safe houses, your fence operations, and your crew rosters." The implications hit Zexthul like a physical blow. The other ships you raided ... were all decoys, every single one. We've been feeding you false targets and watching you take the bait. Did you really think it was coincidence that you kept finding lone human ships in convenient locations? Around the Bloodfang, the other raider ships were in similar condition. Dead in space, their crews alive, but their ships completely disabled. The humans had fought with a precision and ruthlessness that Zexthul had never encountered before. "How?" he asked. "How did you know we would attack this ship?" Captain Chun smiled that cold smile again. "Because we know how you think, Captain. You see humans as weak, easy targets. You assume our technology is primitive because it looks different from yours. You've never bothered to study our military history or our tactical doctrines." She leaned forward slightly. "That was your first mistake. Your second was assuming we fight alone. Before Zexthal could ask what she meant, the space around his disabled fleet began to shimmer. One by one, 3 more human ships decloaked from their hiding spots. A destroyer, a fast attack craft, and a support vessel. They had been there the entire time, waiting and watching. You see, Captain Sean continued, humans learned something important from our early encounters with galactic civilization. We learned that everyone underestimates us. Everyone assumes we're primitive, backwards, harmless. So we decided to use that against you. The support ship was already deploying capture shuttles to collect the disabled pirate vessels. There would be no escape, no last-minute rescue. The Kethver raiding pack had been completely and utterly defeated by what they thought was a single cargo ship. Welcome to human warfare, Captain Zexthal, Chun said. I hope you're ready to learn why attacking our ships is the worst mistake you could possibly make. In the detention bay of the Resolute Dawn, Captain Zexthal sat behind a force field barrier, trying to understand what had happened to his fleet. Through the transparent aluminum wall, he could see his captured crew members being processed by human security teams. They were being treated well, given medical attention, food, and water, but they were definitely prisoners. The door opened and Captain Shun entered, carrying a data pad and 2 cups of something that smelled like coffee. She set 1 cup down, where Zexthal could reach it through the security slot. It's not poisoned, she said, settling into a chair across from him. Though I understand if you don't trust me. Zexthal ignored the coffee. What do you want, human? Information. And to satisfy your curiosity about how we beat you so easily. Chun took a sip from her cup. You keep looking at me like I'm some kind of monster, like what we did was impossible. It was impossible, Zexthal said bitterly. No one fights the way you humans fight. It's unnatural. Chun laughed softly. Unnatural? Captain, you've been raiding ships for 30 years. Haven't you ever wondered why human crews are different from everyone else? You surrender more quickly. You value individual lives over profit. Sometimes, yes, but not when it matters. Chun leaned forward. Tell me, in all those raids you've conducted, how many times have you fought a military vessel? Zexthal thought about it. Military ships don't travel alone. They're too well defended, too organized. We stick merchants and civilians. Exactly. You prey on the weak because it's profitable and safe. But you've never actually fought a war, have you? Not a real war. The pirate captain felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? I mean, you fight like a businessman, not a soldier. You calculate risks and profits. You retreat when the odds turn against you. You treat combat like a transaction. Chun's voice became harder. Humans don't fight transactions, Captain. Humans fight wars. The door opened again, and Chief Engineer Marcus Webb entered. The big man nodded to Chun and activated a holographic display that showed the recent battle from multiple angles. The captain asked me to explain our tactics, Webb said in his gravelly voice. Might help you understand what happened. The hologram showed the moment when the Resolute Dawn revealed its true nature. Zexthal watched his own ships scatter in panic as the human vessel transformed from prey to predator. First lesson, Webb said, pointing to the display. Humans don't fight fair. We fight to win. While your species developed honor codes and rules of engagement, we developed deception and surprise. The display shifted to show the interior battles. Zexthal saw his boarding teams being systematically captured by defenders, who seemed to know exactly where they would go and what they would do. Second lesson, Webb continued. Humans think like pack hunters. We don't just plan for the attack. We plan for the counterattack, the retreat, the pursuit, and everything that comes after. Every human on this ship knew their role in the operation. But How did you know we would attack this specific ship? Zexthil demanded. Chun smiled grimly. Because we've been studying you for months. Every raid you've conducted in human space, every pattern in your behavior, every tactical decision you've made. We built a psychological profile of your entire operation. She gestured to the hologram, which now showed a map of the outer spiral with dozens of marked locations. You always attack lone ships. You prefer cargo haulers to passenger vessels. You avoid military patrols. You operate in specific sectors where response times are slow. You follow the same basic pattern every time. All pirates follow patterns, Zexthil protested. Yes, but most species don't have the patience to map those patterns across months of observation. They react to individual incidents. Humans play the long game. Webb laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Tell him about the merchant cruise, Captain. Ah. Yes. Chun's expression became almost predatory. Those ships you raided over the past year? The ones that surrendered so easily? Half of them were crewed by retired military personnel. Volunteers who let themselves be captured so they could study your boarding procedures, your equipment, your crew composition. Zexthil felt sick. You used your own people as bait. They volunteered, Chun said simply, because they understood the mission. Every human you robbed, every crew member you put in an escape pod, every cargo container you stole, it all went into our database. We learned how you think, how you operate, how you make decisions. The hologram shifted again, showing detailed schematics of Kethfer ships and equipment. Information that should have been impossible for outsiders to obtain. Third lesson, Webb said. Humans share information. Not just with our military, but with everyone. Those merchant captains you robbed, they talked to other merchant captains. The crew members you released, they were debriefed by our intelligence services. Within days of every raid, we knew exactly what weapons you used, what your ships looked like inside, what languages your crew spoke. But that's... Zexthil struggled to find the words. That's not how it works. Merchants don't work with military. Civilians don't spy for governments. Other species don't work that way, Shun agreed. But humans do. When you attack one of us, you attack all of us. That's something your people never understood. The display changed to show the space battle itself. Zexthil watched his ships firing at the Resolute Dawn, their shots going wide as the human vessel moved with impossible agility. Your ships fight like individuals, Webb observed, each captain making their own decisions, following their own tactics. Look at your formation. It's loose, disorganized. Each ship is trying to protect itself first. The hologram highlighted the human ships as they decloaked and moved into position. Their formation was tight, coordinated, with each vessel supporting the others. Humans fight like a single organism, Chun explained. Every ship captain knows what the others will do before they do it. We train together, plan together, think. Together, when you fight one human ship, you're fighting all of them. That's impossible, Zexthil said weakly. Ships can't coordinate that precisely in real-time combat. They can if the crews trust each other completely, Webb replied. If they've trained together for years. If they're willing to take risks that other species consider suicidal. The display showed the moment when the Resolute Dawn charged directly into the pirate formation, exposing itself to massive return fire. Any rational commander would have stayed at long range and traded shots safely. Fourth lesson, Chun said quietly. Humans don't calculate acceptable losses the same way other species do. You retreat when the odds are against you. We advance when the odds are against us. You're insane, Zexthil whispered. No, we're committed. There's a difference. Chun stood up and walked to the holographic display. Every species in the galaxy has been shaped by evolution, Captain. Some evolved to be strong, some to be smart, some to be fast. Humans evolved to be stubborn. She gestured to the battle replay. Look at your crew's behavior when the fight started going badly. Half of them panicked. The other half started looking for escape routes. That's normal, rational behavior for most species. The display focused on the human crew during the battle. They looked tense, focused, but not panicked. Even when enemy fire was hitting their ship, they stayed at their posts and followed orders. Humans don't panic the same way, Webb explained. We get angry. And angry humans are the most dangerous things in the galaxy. But why? Zextal asked desperately. Why fight so hard for a cargo ship? Why risk your lives for mining equipment? Chun looked at him with something almost like pity. You still don't get it, do you? This was never about the cargo, Captain. This was about sending a message. She walked back to her chair and sat down. Every pirate crew in this sector is going to hear about what happened here. They're going to learn that human ships aren't easy targets anymore. They're going to understand that attacking us means war, not just robbery. One battle doesn't change anything, Zextal said, but his voice lacked conviction. One battle changes everything, Shen replied. Because humans don't fight one battle. At a time, we fight campaigns. We fight entire wars with a single engagement. Webb activated another display, this one showing a galactic map with dozens of red dots scattered across multiple star systems. While we were hunting your little fleet, he said with satisfaction, other human task forces were tracking down the rest of the Kethfer Syndicate. Your supply bases, your safe houses, your business partners. Zextal stared at the map in horror. Every red dot represented a location his organization used for operations. The humans had found them all. Fifth lesson, Chun said softly. Humans don't just win battles. We eliminate threats completely. By the time you're released from prison, Captain, the Kethfer Syndicate will be a footnote in history. She stood up to leave, then paused at the door. You asked why we fight so differently from other species. The answer is simple, because we have to. Every other species in the galaxy is stronger than us, or smarter than us, or more advanced than us. The only way humanity survives is by being more committed than anyone else. As the door closed behind her, Zextal sat in his cell and finally understood what he had awakened. The humans weren't just another species to be preyed upon. They were apex predators disguised as herbivores, and they had been hunting him from the moment 3 days after the capture of the Kethfer raiding fleet, Commander Elena Vasquez sat in the communication center of Naval Station Kepler, watching data streams flow across dozens of monitors. As head of the Human Anti-Piracy Coordination Network, she had been waiting for this moment for over a year. Signal strength is good on all channels, reported Lieutenant Torres from his console. We have confirmed contact with 47 human vessels, 12 colonial governments, and 8 allied species naval commands. Elena nodded, feeling the familiar thrill of a plan coming together. The capture of Zextal's fleet had been just the beginning. Now came the real operation, a systematic dismantling of the largest pirate organization in the outer spiral. Activate the beacon, she ordered, across human space. A coded signal went out on frequencies that most galactic civilizations didn't even know existed. To anyone monitoring communications, it looked like routine commercial traffic shipping. Schedules, weather reports, commodity prices. But hidden in the data streams were coordinates, timing codes, and target assignments that had been planned for months. Captain Maria Santos received the signal aboard her cargo hauler, Lucky Strike, while docked at Vega Station. She was loading supplies for the mining colonies when her ship's computer chimed softly. To any observer, she was checking a routine message from her company headquarters. In reality, she was receiving orders that would change the balance of power in 3-star systems. Santos, had been a commander in the colonial navy for 15 years before retiring to become a merchant captain. Like many veterans, she stayed in touch with old colleagues and occasionally did favors for human intelligence. Services. What made her valuable wasn't just her military experience. It was her network of contacts throughout the commercial shipping industry. "Jimmy," she called to her first officer, a young man who looked like a typical cargo handler. "Break out the special equipment. It's time for that job we discussed." Jimmy Chun smiled and headed for the cargo bay. The Lucky Strike carried legitimate mining supplies, but hidden in sealed containers were surveillance drones, communication jammers, and other equipment that would help map Kethfer safe houses. Like dozens of other merchant vessels, Santos had been gathering intelligence on pirate operations for months. Meanwhile, on the agricultural world of New Brisbane, Farmer Jack Morrison was having his morning coffee when his personal communicator buzzed. The message looked like a routine weather update, but Morrison had learned to read the hidden codes during his 20 years as a Marine. He finished his coffee, kissed his wife goodbye, and headed to the barn where he kept his farming equipment. The equipment included a high-powered sensor array disguised as a grain silo, capable of tracking ship movements across half the system. Morrison had been monitoring pirate traffic for the past year, dutifully reporting every suspicious vessel that passed through New Brisbane's sensor range. Today, his data would help coordinate the largest anti-piracy operation in galactic history. The network extended far beyond military veterans. Dr. Sarah Kim, a xenobiologist studying coral formations on the ocean world of Tethys, interrupted her research to decode a message hidden in a scientific journal submission. The message contained genetic profiles of several alien species known to work with the Kethfer Syndicate. Her job was to identify any pirates who might try to hide among refugee populations. Merchant Captain David Park was delivering medical supplies to a remote research station when he received his orders. Park had never served in the military, but his sister had been killed in a pirate raid 5 years earlier. He volunteered to work with Human Intelligence Services, using his medical transport as cover to visit systems where military ships couldn't go legally. His cargo hold contained medical scanners that doubled as reconnaissance equipment. Even the tourists were involved. Rebecca Thompson, a travel writer visiting the luxury resort world of Paradise Prime, received her assignment through a travel advisory update. Her job was to identify Kethfer money laundering operations disguised as legitimate businesses. As a journalist, she could ask questions and take pictures without arousing suspicion at the coordination center at Naval Station. Kepler tracked all these assets in real time. Elena Vasquez watched as status reports flowed in from across known space. Human operatives, both military and civilian, were moving into position for simultaneous strikes against Kethfer operations. "How many confirmed targets?" she asked Torres. 17 major installations, 34 supply caches, and 52 business fronts across 12 star systems, he replied. "We also have positive identification on 43 Kethfer vessels, currently in port at various locations." Elena smiled grimly. The Kethfer Syndicate thought they were fighting one human task force. They had no idea they were facing the entire Human Intelligence Network, a web of connections that spanned half the galaxy and included everyone from retired admirals to small-town farmers. "What about our allied species?" she asked. "The Centaurian Navy has 8 ships in position. The Vegan Defense Force is contributing 12 vessels. The Altarian Peacekeepers are providing ground support teams." Elena nodded. Human diplomats had been working for months to coordinate this operation, sharing intelligence with friendly governments and building a coalition against piracy. What made it possible was humanity's reputation for reliability. When humans said they would do something, other species believed them. The first strike came at 14:30 Standard Time. Captain Santos and her cargo hauler, appeared at the edge of the Rigel system, where intelligence indicated a major Kethver supply depot. The depot was built into an asteroid, disguised as a mining operation. It had been operating for over 10 years without detection. Santos deployed her surveillance drones and began a detailed scan of the facility. Within minutes, she had confirmed the presence of stolen goods, illegal weapons, and several wanted criminals. She transmitted the data to a Centaurian patrol cruiser waiting in hyperspace. "Target confirmed," she reported. "Initiating surrender protocols." The Lucky Strike broadcast a standard distress signal, claiming engine failure. As expected, the pirates launched small craft to investigate and rob the apparently helpless cargo ship. The moment they were clear of the asteroid base, the Centaurian cruiser dropped out of hyperspace and disabled them with precision ion cannon fire. Similar operations were taking place across the galaxy. On Vega 7, Dr. Kim's genetic profiles helped security forces identify 3 Kethver operatives hiding among migrant workers. On Paradise Prime, Rebecca Thompson's investigations led to the arrest of a casino owner who had been washing stolen credits for years. The beauty of the human network was its flexibility. Unlike traditional military operations, which required rigid command structures and formal authorization, the human system relied on individual initiative and trust. Each operative made their own tactical decisions based on local conditions, but all worked toward the same strategic goal. Farmer Morrison detected a convoy of suspicious ships passing through his system and alerted a vegan patrol fleet. Medical. Transport Captain Park used his legitimate access to a restricted research facility to plant surveillance equipment near a suspected pirate meeting site. Even travel writer Thompson found ways to contribute, using her journalist credentials to interview people who had information about Kethver operations. The pirates never saw it coming. They were used to fighting governments and military organizations with predictable procedures and limited resources. They had no experience dealing with an enemy that included farmers, doctors, journalists, and merchants, all working together without formal command structure. Elena watched the reports flow in from across the galaxy. Strike after strike, capture. After capture, the Kethver Syndicate's network was being systematically destroyed. Within 6 hours, over 60% of their known assets had been seized or neutralized. "Commander," Torres said excitedly, "we're getting reports from the Arcturus system." The Kethver Leadership Council was meeting at their hidden headquarters. Local human assets provided targeting data for a joint strike by human and Altarian forces. Elena leaned forward. Results? 17 high-ranking Kethver commanders captured, including their overall leader. No casualties on our side. The Arcturus operation had been particularly complex. A human mining engineer named Robert Chun had spent 3 months working at an asteroid mining facility that was actually the entrance to the Kethver headquarters. Chun had used his access to map the entire complex and identify security weaknesses. When the assault began, he had disabled the emergency lockdown systems from inside DOT. As the day continued, the scope of the operation became clear. The humans hadn't just attacked one pirate fleet. They had declared war on organized piracy itself. Using intelligence gathered over months by hundreds of operatives, they had struck at every aspect of the Kethver organization simultaneously. "Status report," Elena requested as the sun set over Naval Station Kepler. 93% of known Kethver assets neutralized or captured, Torres replied. Estimated financial damage to their organization complete. Remaining operational capacity negligible. Elena allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The Kethver Syndicate. 6 months after the destruction of the Kethver Syndicate, Ambassador Thane Keller of the Galactic Commerce Guild stood before the emergency session of the Outer Spiral Security Council. The amphitheater was packed with representatives from dozens of species, all gathered to discuss what many were calling the human problem. "The statistics are undeniable," Keller said, his crystalline voice echoing through the chamber. "Piracy in human-controlled space has dropped by 89%. Trade route security has increased by 300%. Insurance costs for shipping through human territories have fallen to the lowest levels in recorded history." A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. These were remarkable numbers by any standard, but they came with implications that made many species uncomfortable. "However," Keller continued, "these improvements have come at a cost that we must consider carefully. The humans have fundamentally changed how security operations are conducted in civilized space. They have ignored traditional protocols, violated sovereignty agreements, and demonstrated a level of coordination that some find ... concerning." In the human delegation section, Admiral Janet Harrison sat quietly, listening to the debate that had been inevitable from the moment Operation Pandora succeeded. As commander of human space forces, she had expected this political backlash. Other species were always uncomfortable when humans proved more effective than expected. The Centaurian Republic wishes to voice its strong support for human anti-piracy efforts, announced Ambassador Vex, rising from his seat. "Our shipping losses in joint patrol zones have decreased by 74%. Human tactical doctrine has proven highly effective." "Effective, yes," replied Ambassador Senth of the Vegan Confederacy, "but also unprecedented. No single species has ever coordinated intelligence assets across such a wide area. The humans have created a network that spans dozens of star systems, involving both military and civilian personnel." Admiral Harrison finally stood to address the council. "If I may respond to these concerns," she said formally, "the human government has acted within all applicable laws and treaties. We have shared intelligence with allied species and coordinated our operations through proper diplomatic channels." "But you have also armed civilian vessels," accused Delegate Morax of the Traders Collective. "You have used merchant ships as intelligence platforms. You have turned ordinary citizens into spies and soldiers." Harrison smiled slightly. "We have used the resources available to us, Delegate, just as every species does when facing threats to their security. No other species maintains such extensive civilian involvement in military operations," Morax insisted. "It is ... unnatural." "Unnatural?" Harrison repeated. "Or simply effective?" The debate that followed lasted for hours, but Harrison had heard all the arguments before. Other species were uncomfortable with humanity's approach to warfare because it didn't fit their traditional concepts of how conflicts should be conducted. They preferred clear boundaries between military and civilian, between government and private sector, between war and peace. Humans had no such boundaries. 2 weeks later, Harrison found herself in a very different setting, the maximum security prison on Titan Station, sitting across from former pirate Captain Zexthul. The alien looked older, his scales duller than they had been during his capture. Prison life had not been kind to him. "You wanted to see me," Harrison said without preamble. "Why?" Zexthul stared at her for a long moment before speaking. "I've been thinking about our conversation with Captain Chun, about why humans fight differently than other species. And I think I understand now. It's not just about tactics or technology. It's about what you believe war is for." Harrison leaned back in her chair. "Explain." "Most species fight to achieve specific objectives," Zexthul said slowly. "Territory, resources, political goals. When those objectives are met or become impossible to achieve, the fighting stops. Both sides calculate costs and benefits and decide when to quit." "That's logical," Harrison agreed. "But humans don't fight for objectives. You fight for principles. When someone attacks you, it's not just a tactical problem to be solved. It's a moral issue that demands resolution." Harrison said nothing, waiting for him to continue. The Kethver Syndicate raided human ships for profit. Zexthul went on. We calculated risks and rewards. When the risks became too high, we planned to find easier targets. But you didn't see it as a business transaction. You saw it as an act of war. Because it was an act of war, Harrison replied quietly. Every time you attacked a human ship, you declared war on humanity. You just didn't realize it. Zexthul nodded slowly. And humans fight wars to win them completely. Not to gain advantage or negotiate better terms, but to eliminate the threat entirely. Now you're beginning to understand. But why? Zexthul asked desperately. Why not just increase your security and accept some losses as the cost of doing business? Why mobilize entire populations for what most species would consider a minor? Security problem? Harrison was quiet for a long moment, considering her answer. Because we can't afford to lose, Captain. Every other species in the galaxy has advantages over us. You're stronger, or faster, or more technologically advanced, or have larger populations. The only advantage humans have is our refusal to accept defeat. She stood to leave, then paused. You asked Captain Shun why we fight so hard for a cargo ship full of mining equipment. The answer is simple. Because if we don't fight hard for everything, we won't survive to fight for anything. As Harrison left the prison, Zexthul sat in his cell and contemplated the true scope of his miscalculation. He had thought he was robbing merchant ships. In reality, he had declared war on a species that treated every conflict as a fight for survival. The effects of Operation Pandora continued to ripple through the galaxy. Within a year, piracy in the outer spiral had declined by over 90%. Criminal organizations that had operated for decades simply vanished, their leadership dead or imprisoned, their assets seized by coordinated law enforcement efforts. But the real change was psychological. Throughout the galaxy, criminal organizations began avoiding human space entirely. Ships flying human flags were left alone, even when they appeared vulnerable. Space stations with human security contracts saw their crime rates plummet. The message was clear. Humans didn't just fight back when attacked. They eliminated threats completely and permanently. Other species began studying human military doctrine, trying to understand how such a young civilization had developed such effective tactics. Military academies added courses on human warfare theory to their curricula. Alliance staff colleges invited human instructors to teach coordination and intelligence operations, but they never quite grasped the essential truth that Zexthul had finally understood in his prison cell. For humans, there was no distinction between individual survival and species survival. An attack on one human ship was perceived as an attack on all of humanity, requiring a response proportional not to the immediate damage, but to the existential threat represented. 5 years after the destruction of the Kethver Syndicate, Ambassador Harrison addressed the same Galactic Security Council that had questioned human methods. The statistics speak for themselves, she said, displaying charts that showed crime rates across human space. Piracy is down 96%. Smuggling operations have been reduced by 87%. Terrorist incidents have dropped to near zero. She paused, looking around the amphitheater at delegates who had once criticized human tactics. More importantly, these improvements have spread beyond human space. Our allied species have seen similar reductions in criminal activity. Our joint patrol programs have been adopted by 12 different governments. The coordination networks we developed are now being used for disaster relief, medical emergencies, and scientific research. The applause was polite, but genuine. Even former critics had to admit that human methods worked. However, Harrison continued, I want to address the concerns that some of you have raised about human military doctrine. You worry that our approach to security is too aggressive, too comprehensive, Human. She smiled slightly. You're right to be concerned. Because the galaxy has learned something important from the Kethver incident. Attacking a human ship isn't just robbery. It's a declaration of war against a species that treats every war as a fight for survival. The amphitheater was completely silent now. We didn't choose to be the galaxy's enforcers, Harrison said quietly. We became enforcers because someone had to be, and no one else was willing to pay the price. Every time you choose not to respond to aggression, every time you calculate that the costs outweigh the benefits, every time you negotiate with criminals and terrorists, you make the galaxy a little less safe for everyone. She gathered her notes and prepared to leave. Humans fight differently because we have to. Because we learned early that in a galaxy full of species stronger and more advanced than us, our only option is to be more committed than anyone else. As she walked toward the exit, Harrison delivered her final message to the assembled delegates. So, yes, attacking a human ship is their greatest miscalculation. Not because we're the strongest, or the smartest, or the most advanced, but because we're the only species that treats every attack as if the survival of...
The vast darkness of space stretched endlessly around the Sovereign Fist, a massive warship of the Karathi Empire. Inside its command center, crew members moved with practiced efficiency between glowing consoles. The ship had been on patrol for 6 weeks following the same route they had taken hundreds of times before. Nothing ever happened in this sector. The crew was bored. Commander Vaxrill, a tall creature with scales that shimmered like oil on water, stood at the center of the bridge. His forearms crossed over his chest as he watched the main display. The sensors showed the usual empty space, stars, dust, and the occasional asteroid. His people had ruled this part of the galaxy for 3,000 years. Their technology was advanced, their weapons powerful, and their sensors the best in known space. Then the console beeped. "Commander," called sensor technician Kolvax, "I'm reading an anomaly at coordinates 17 Mark 6. Vaxrill uncrossed his arms and moved closer. "What kind of anomaly?" "Unknown, sir. The readings are strange. The computer shows a massive energy signature, but also says nothing is there." The commander frowned. His scales shifted color slightly. A sign of confusion. "That makes no sense. Run a diagnostic on the sensor array." "Already running, sir. But the readings persist." Vaxrill had seen sensor ghosts before. Sometimes cosmic radiation could create false readings. Sometimes a malfunctioning relay would show enemy ships where none existed. But this was different. The energy signature was too large, too powerful. If it was real, it would be bigger than their own ship. "Maintain course," he ordered. "Continue monitoring, but don't waste more time on it." 3 light minutes away, the human warship Defiant drifted in space. Its engines were powered down to minimum levels, and most systems ran on emergency power. The ship looked different from any vessel in the known galaxy. Where the Karathi built their ships for raw power and intimidation, the Defiant was sleek and angular, covered in panels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Lieutenant Junior Grade Ryan Kelly sat at the helm station, watching the tactical display. His fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. The green dots on his screen represented nearby celestial bodies. The red dot was something else entirely, the alien ship they had stumbled upon. "Captain," Ryan said quietly. "The alien vessel is maintaining its course. They haven't detected us yet." Captain Dan Harris stood behind him, studying the display. Harris was a tall man with graying hair and sharp eyes. He had commanded the Defiant for 5 years, taking it deeper into uncharted space than any human ship before. "Good work, Lieutenant. How long have we been watching them?" 3 hours, 17 minutes, sir." Chief Engineer Amy Wright looked up from her station. She was a small woman with red hair tied back in a tight bun. Her fingers never stopped moving across her console, making tiny adjustments to keep their experimental stealth systems running. "Captain, the new stealth tech is working better than expected," Amy reported. "We're absorbing most of their sensor pings. Some energy is bleeding through, but it's not enough for them to get a solid lock. Harris nodded. This was their first test of the new stealth systems in real conditions. So far, it was performing beyond anyone's hopes, but watching an alien warship from this close was not part of the original plan. They had entered this system by accident. A navigation error had brought them 15 light-years off course. Instead of the empty space they expected, they found themselves near an alien patrol route. Now they had a choice: reveal themselves and make first contact, or observe from hiding and learn what they could. "What do you make of their ship, Amy?" Harris asked. "It's impressive, sir. Much larger than us, probably twice our mass. Their power output is enormous but inefficient. They're using energy-based weapons and shields that seem very advanced but also very power-hungry. Can you tell anything about their tactical systems?" "Some things, sir. They're running active sensors constantly. No stealth capabilities that I can detect. Their weapon systems appear to be in standby mode, but they can charge quickly if needed." Ryan studied the alien ship's movement pattern. "Captain, they're following a very predictable route. Same speed, same trajectory, they've been at it for hours." "Routine patrol," Harris mused. "They've done this so many times they're not even trying to vary their pattern." Communications Officer Lisa Brown spoke up from her station. "Sir, should I attempt first contact? We have translation protocols ready." Harris considered this. First contact was always risky. They didn't know anything about these aliens, their culture, their intentions, or how they might react to humans. "Not yet, Lieutenant. Let's observe a little longer. We need to understand more about them before we reveal ourselves." The Defiant had been built for deep space exploration, but it was also prepared for defense. Harris knew his crew was ready for anything, but he preferred to avoid conflict when possible. War was always the last option, especially when meeting a new species. Back on the Sovereign Fist, the sensor anomaly continued to puzzle the crew. Technician Kovacs ran diagnostic after diagnostic, but the readings remained the same. Finally, he decided to dig deeper into the system logs. "Commander," he called out, "I've found something interesting." Vaxrill returned to the sensor station. "What is it?" "The anomaly has been present for over 3 hours. It hasn't moved, but it also hasn't disappeared, and, sir, it seems to be actively absorbing our sensor sweeps." "That's impossible. Nothing we know of can do that." "Yes, sir. But the pattern suggests something is there. Something that doesn't want to be seen." A chill ran through Vaxrill's body. In all his years of service, he had never encountered technology that could hide from Karathi sensors. Their empire had expanded across dozens of systems precisely because their technology was superior to everyone else's. "Should I increase sensor intensity, sir?" Kovacs asked. Vaxrill thought carefully. If something was truly hiding in their space, he needed to know what it was, but increasing sensor power might also reveal their own position if this was some kind of trap. Moderate increase only, and bring the weapon systems to standby. As the Sovereign Fist boosted its sensors, the Defiant detected the change immediately. "Captain," Ryan reported, "the alien ship is scanning more actively. They're trying to get a better look at us." "They know something's there," Amy added. "Our stealth systems are good but not perfect. If they keep this up, they'll eventually get through." Harris made his decision. Maintain position. Reduce power to minimum safe levels. Let's see what they do next. On both ships, tension grew. The Karathi had detected something impossible. A ghost in their sensors that might be real. The humans had found themselves accidentally spying on an alien empire. Neither crew knew what would happen next, but both were preparing for the worst. The vast emptiness of space suddenly felt very small. Time crawled by like a wounded creature. 3 hours had passed since the anomaly first appeared on the Sovereign Fist sensors. 3 hours of strange readings that made no sense. Commander Vaxrill paced the bridge, his scales shifting through patterns of deep thought. This wasn't normal, this wasn't right. "Sir," Sensor Technician Kovacs called out again, "the anomaly is still there. The readings are getting stronger." "Show me the exact coordinates," Vaxrill ordered. The main screen displayed a 3-dimensional map of local space. A pulsing red marker indicated where their computers thought something existed, but shouldn't. Vaxrill studied it carefully. Protocol. Demanded he investigate any potential threat no matter how unlikely. Change course. Take us directly toward the anomaly. I want to see what this thing actually is. Weapons Officer Jackston looked up from his station. Sir, should I prepare defensive systems? No, not yet, but keep them ready. If this is some new weapon or trap, I want to be prepared. The massive Karathi warship altered its course, turning toward the mysterious readings. Its engines hummed with increased power as it accelerated toward the unknown. On the Defiant, alarms began to sound softly. Ryan Kelly's hands moved quickly across his controls, updating the tactical display. Captain, the alien ship has changed course. They're heading directly toward us. Captain Harris moved to stand behind the tactical station. His eyes studied the approaching vessel on the screen. Time to intercept? At their current speed, approximately 7 minutes, sir. Amy Wright looked up from her engineering console, concern clear on her face. Captain, they've increased sensor intensity by 40%. Our stealth systems are working, but they won't hold much longer. Harris took a deep breath. The decision point had arrived faster than expected. He could order the ship to move away, avoiding contact entirely, or he could prepare for what might be an inevitable meeting. Battle stations, he ordered. Charge main weapons to 50%, shields up, but keep them at minimum power. I don't want to appear aggressive. Yes, sir, came the chorus of responses. Lieutenant Lisa Brown activated her communication systems. Sir, should I attempt first contact now? Not yet. Let's see what they do first. The Sovereign Fist continued its approach, closing the distance rapidly. As it drew nearer, its sensors finally pierced through the human stealth technology. The tactical display exploded with new information. Kovacs nearly fell from his station. Commander, direct hit on the anomaly. It's a ship, sir. A massive warship. The bridge erupted in controlled chaos. Multiple screens activated, showing different views of the newly detected vessel. It was unlike anything in their databases. Sleek, dark, and covered with weapon systems. What species? Vaxrill demanded. Unknown, sir. The design doesn't match any known race. A cold feeling settled in Vaxrill's stomach. For the first time in his career, their sensors had found something, completely unknown. Something that had been hiding from them for hours. In Karathi culture, stealth meant hostile intent. Only enemies hid from superior forces. Weapons to full charge, shields to maximum, he ordered. This is not a drill. The Sovereign Fist transformed instantly from a routine patrol ship to a battle-ready warship. Energy weapons hummed to life, shield generators reached full power, and every crew member prepared for combat. Ryan Kelly watched his display as the alien ship suddenly blazed with energy signatures. Captain, they're charging weapons and raising shields. They're preparing to attack. Harris felt the situation spiraling beyond control. They had tried to remain peaceful, but the alien ship was clearly taking an aggressive stance. Every instinct told him to maintain neutrality, but his responsibility to his crew came first. Increase shields to full power. Charge all weapon systems. Prepare evasive maneuvers. Amy Wright's fingers flew across her console. Power distribution optimal, Captain. All systems ready. Both ships now faced each other, weapons charged, shields up, each convinced the other intended to attack. The space between them crackled with tension and energy emissions. Vaxrill studied the tactical display. The unknown ship was smaller than the Sovereign Fist, but its power readings were impressive. Its weapons charged quickly, its shields activated smoothly. This was no primitive vessel. Open a channel, he ordered. Demand identification. The communications officer tried multiple frequencies but received only static in response. The unknown ship remained silent. No response, Commander. Vaxrill's scales darkened with concern. Silent ships meant pirates or invaders. In 3,000 years of Karathi expansion, peaceful species always responded to communication attempts. Only those with hostile intentions remained quiet. Prepare for combat operations. Target their weapons systems. On the Defiant, Lisa Brown worked frantically at her communications console. Captain, I'm receiving multiple hails on different frequencies, but our translation matrix isn't recognizing their language. I can't understand what they're saying. Keep trying. Send basic mathematical sequences, universal greetings, anything that might get through. But the Karathi, convinced they faced a hostile force, had already made their decision. In their experience, ships that hid and then appeared with charged weapons were preparing to attack. Their military doctrine was clear: strike first when facing unknown threats. Fire, Vaxrill commanded. Bright beams of energy erupted from the Sovereign Fist, targeting the human ship's weapon systems. The colors of the weapons fire painted space in brilliant hues of blue and white. Incoming fire, Ryan shouted. Multiple energy weapons targeted at our main guns. Captain Harris had milliseconds to decide. Evasive pattern Alpha, return fire. Target their weapons only. The Defiant twisted in space, its smaller size allowing it to dodge some of the incoming fire. Explosions bloomed against its shields as other shots found their mark. The human ship returned fire with precise kinetic rounds and focused energy beams. Direct hits on their forward weapons array, Steve Martinez reported from the weapons console. 2 of their primary guns are offline, but the Sovereign Fist had more weapons. Much more. Counterfire came immediately, heavier and more coordinated. Captain, shields at 60% and falling, Amy called out. Her voice remained steady despite the chaos. Multiple hits on sections 4 through 7. The bridge shook violently as another salvo found its target. Warning lights flashed across every console. The smell of burned circuits filled the air. Vaxrill watched the tactical display with growing confusion. The unknown ship fought with remarkable skill. Its weapons were accurate, its movements precise. But it only targeted military systems, avoiding any shots that might harm the crew. They're not trying to destroy us, he realized aloud. They're trying to disable us. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Pirates and invaders didn't fight like this. They struck to kill, to destroy, to take by force. These tactics suggested something else entirely. Commander, should I target their engines? Jax Tam asked. Vaxrill hesitated. Something wasn't right about this encounter. The unknown ship had hidden, yes, but it had also waited. It had charged weapons only after they did. It had returned fire only when fired upon. Hold fire, he ordered, his voice uncertain, but the order came too late. Another volley was already away, streaking through space toward the human ship. The crew of the Defiant braced for impact as the deadly energy beams approached their position. In the vast emptiness of space, 2 civilizations had met for the first time, and they were already trying to destroy each other. The energy beams screamed through space, painting the darkness with deadly light. Captain Harris watched them approach on the main screen, time seeming to slow as he calculated their options. Evasive pattern Delta, he commanded. All hands, brace for impact. Ryan Kelly's hands danced across his controls. The Defiant spun sideways and dove downward, using its superior maneuverability to slip past most of the incoming fire. One beam clipped their starboard wing, sending sparks flying across the bridge. Minor hull damage on Deck 7, Amy reported. Shields holding at 43%. Chief Tactical Officer Steve Martinez locked onto the alien ship's weapons. Captain, I have firing solutions on their remaining main guns. Target their weapon systems only, Harris ordered firmly. I don't want to kill anyone if we can avoid it. The Defiant returned fire with precision. Kinetic rounds and energy beams struck the Sovereign Fist's forward section. One of their largest weapons exploded in a shower of metal and light. On the Karathi bridge, Vaxrill watched his ship take damage. The unknown vessel moved like nothing he had ever seen before. It twisted and turned with impossible speed, dodging shots that should have connected. How are they moving like that? He demanded. Unknown, sir, replied pilot Zaknar. Their thrusters fire in patterns we've never encountered. They seem to use micro-adjustments constantly. Another volley from the human ship disabled 2 more Karathi weapons. Vaxrill's confusion grew. These weren't the wild, aggressive attacks he expected from invaders. Every shot was calculated, precise, surgical. "Sir, damage to forward weapons grid," reported engineering. 70% of our primary guns are offline. Vaxrill made a decision. All power to engines. Full speed ahead. Ram them if necessary. The massive Karathi warship surged forward, its engines glowing bright blue, but Harris had anticipated this move. "They're charging us, Captain," Ryan announced. "Impact in 40 seconds. Full reverse. Launch countermeasures. Steve, target their engines with everything we have." The Defiant fired backward while unleashing a storm of defensive chaff and electronic jammers. At the same time, every weapon they had focused on the Sovereign Fist's engine section. Kate Johnson, at the weapons station, made a discovery. "Captain, their shields have a weakness. They cycle power to recharge. There's a gap every 6 seconds. Time it perfectly. All weapons, fire on my mark." Kate counted down, watching the alien shield readings. "Mark." Every gun on the Defiant fired, simultaneously. The kinetic rounds and energy beams struck the Sovereign Fist just as their shields were recharging. The impact was devastating. Explosions tore through the alien ship's engine section. One of their main thrusters went dark. The massive vessel, unable to maintain its charge, veered off course. "Direct hit," Steve called out. "Their main engine is down." But the Karathi weren't finished. From ports along their hull, smaller weapons emerged. Dozens of point defense guns swiveled toward the human ship. Multiple small weapon signatures. Ryan warned. "Incoming." A wall of fire erupted from the Sovereign Fist. Hundreds of smaller energy bolts filled space between the two ships. The Defiant couldn't dodge them all. "Shields at 20%, Amy shouted over the sound of impacts. "We're taking heavy damage." Harris remained calm, his mind working through options. "Lisa, try to jam their targeting systems. Amy, reroute all non-essential power to shields. Ryan, I need creative flying. Use the asteroids." The young pilot's eyes lit up. "Yes, sir." Ryan steered the Defiant toward a nearby asteroid field. The ID ship weaved between floating rocks, using them as cover. The Karathi fire struck asteroids instead of hull, buying precious seconds. "Captain," Lisa said, "I'm getting something on the alien communications. It's not language, it's data." "What kind of data?" "Tactical information, sir. They're sharing combat data with other ships." Harris realized the implications immediately. "They're calling for reinforcements. How long do we have?" "Unknown, sir. Could be minutes, could be hours." The Defiant emerged from the asteroid field, approaching the damaged Karathi vessel from an unexpected angle. Steve targeted their communication array. "Firing on their communications," he announced. The shot was perfect. The Sovereign Fist's main communication dish shattered, cutting off their distress signal. Vaxrill watched his bridge displays with growing amazement. This unknown ship fought with intelligence he had rarely seen. They used terrain. They identified weaknesses. They disabled rather than destroyed. "Weapons Officer Jackstam," he said slowly. "What do you make of their combat style?" Jackstam had been studying the human attacks. "Sir, they fight like us, but different. They're not trying to destroy us. Every shot is placed with purpose." A thought struck Vaxrill. Could this be a test? Another species checking our defenses? Possible, sir. But who has this technology? On the Defiant, Amy Wright was pushing the ship systems beyond normal limits. "Captain, I've got an idea. Their weapon systems seem to overheat after sustained fire. If we can force them to fire continuously, we can create an opening," Harris finished. "Do it." Amy's fingers flew across her console, making adjustments to their shield frequency. "Steve, I need you to create a target they can't resist. Make our shields look like they're failing." Steve grinned. "Fake weakness, I like it." The weapons officer adjusted their shield emissions, creating patterns that suggested imminent failure. The bait was irresistible. On the Sovereign Fist, sensors showed the human ship's shields fluctuating badly. "Sir, their defensive systems are failing," Colvax reported. "All remaining weapons, concentrate fire on their shield weakness." Vaxrill ordered. Every functional gun on the Karathi ship opened fire. Energy beams streaked toward the Defiant's supposedly weak spot. The constant fire made their weapons glow brighter and brighter. Their weapons are overheating, Kate observed, watching her instruments. Temperature rising rapidly. Wait for it, Harris said, watching the display. Wait. Suddenly, several of the Sovereign Fist's weapons shut down automatically, their safety systems preventing meltdown. Now, Harris commanded. All power to engines, maximum acceleration, target their bridge. The Defiant shot forward like an arrow. The sudden speed caught the Karathi completely off guard. In seconds, the human ship was close enough to see individual viewports on the alien vessel. Firing, Steve announced. But instead of weapons fire, bright searchlights erupted from the Defiant, directly illuminating the Sovereign Fist's bridge. The message was clear. We could have destroyed you, but we choose not to. Vaxrel stared at the blazing lights, understanding flooding through him. These beings had won the fight. They had outmaneuvered, outthought, and outfought his ship, yet they hadn't destroyed it. They hadn't killed his crew. For the first time in Karathi military history, surrender seemed not just reasonable, but honorable. Ceasefire, he ordered quietly. All weapons stand down. The battle was over, but both sides knew something important had just begun. Silence stretched across space like an invisible thread. The two ships floated dead in the vacuum, both damaged but intact. Neither side moved. Neither side fired. The only sounds were the hum of life support systems and the quiet breathing of crews waiting for what came next. Commander Vaxrel stared at the main screen, watching the human ship. The bright searchlights had turned off, but the message remained clear. His scales shifted to deep blue, a color of contemplation and respect. In all his years of service, no enemy had ever chosen to spare him when victory was certain. Sir, Communications Officer Talvek said carefully, "What are your orders?" Vaxrel thought for a long moment. Military doctrine was clear. When faced with superior force, withdraw if possible, fight to the death if not. But this situation didn't fit doctrine. They had lost, but they lived. The enemy showed skill beyond any species in known space, yet showed mercy. Open all communication frequencies, he decided. All of them. Basic mathematical sequences, universal greetings, everything we have. Talvex began broadcasting immediately. Simple mathematical patterns pulsed through space. 1 + 1 = 2. 2 + 2 = 4. The building blocks of communication. On the Defiant, Lisa Brown jumped from her seat. "Captain, we're receiving transmissions. They're trying to make contact." Captain Harris moved to her station. "What kind of transmissions?" "Mathematics, sir. Universal language patterns. They want to talk." Harris looked around his bridge. His crew waited, watching him. They had won the fight, but now came the harder part, understanding why there had been a fight at all. Respond with the same patterns. Add basic physics. Show them we understand. Lisa's fingers flew over her controls. Soon, both ships were exchanging mathematical and physical concepts, simple ideas that crossed any language barrier. Within minutes, the communication evolved. Pictures began appearing on both screens. Simple shapes, then more complex images. The aliens sent pictures of their ship, their star charts, basic representations of their species. The humans responded with similar images, pictures of Earth, of human space, of the Defiant itself. On the Sovereign Fist, Vaxrel studied the incoming images with growing amazement. These beings looked nothing like any species he had encountered. They were smaller than Karathi, with strange skin and only 2 arms, but their technology was remarkable. "Sir," Colvax called out, "I'm reading their star charts. They call their home Earth. It's far from here. Much farther than any species we know." "How far?" "At least 70 light years from Karathi space, sir. They've traveled incredibly far." Vaxrel's scale shifted to purple, a sign of deep thought. These were not invaders from nearby systems. These were explorers from a distant world. Yet they had technology that rivaled or exceeded Karathi science. "Can you access additional data about them?" "Yes, sir." They're sharing more information. Wait, this is interesting. What? According to their data, they're relatively new to space travel, only a few hundred years, but their development has been rapid. Vaxrill felt a chill run through his body. A species that went from planetary to interstellar travel in a few hundred years? That was unheard of. Most species took thousands of years for such development. Show me their military history. Images appeared on the screen. Ships fighting other ships. Conflicts on the ground of their homeworld. Tactical diagrams showing battle formations. They fight amongst themselves, Jackstem observed, constantly from the look of it. Vaxrill studied the images carefully. These humans warred with each other regularly. They developed weapons, tactics, and strategies through endless conflict. No wonder they fought so skillfully. They're warrior-born, he said quietly. Their entire species was forged in battle. On the Defiant, the crew watched similar information about the Karathi appearing on their screens. Empire maps showed vast territories spanning multiple star systems. Military records displayed thousands of years of conquest and expansion. Captain, Steve Martinez said, they're an Empire species. They've been conquering space for millennia, and they thought we were invaders in their territory, Harris realized. That's why they attacked. Amy Wright was examining technical data. Sir, look at their technology. It's much older than ours, more established, but it's less innovative. They use brute force where we use creativity. The exchange continued for an hour. Both sides shared more information. Science, culture, basic language concepts. Slowly, understanding grew. Finally, Vaxrill made a decision. He activated the ship's universal translator and attempted direct communication. The words would be rough, imperfect but perhaps understandable. Human vessel. His voice carried across space, filtered through translation programs. I am Commander Vaxrill of the Karathi Empire. We apologize. We thought you were invaders. On the Defiant, everyone turned to look at the speakers. The alien voice was deep, with strange pronunciation, but the words were clear. Captain Harris stepped forward. This is Captain Dan Harris of the United Nations ship Defiant. We also apologize. We did not mean to intrude in your space. We were lost. Lost? Vaxrill asked. You travel so far to be lost? Yes. A navigation error brought us here. We were testing new technology when we discovered your patrol route. There was a pause, then Vaxrill spoke again. Your ship? It hides very well. Your weapons? Very accurate. Your tactics? Unknown to us. Harris smiled slightly. You fight well, too. Your ship is impressive, much larger than ours. But you defeated us, easily. We avoided destruction. That's different from victory. Another pause. On the Sovereign, Fist, Vaxrill discussed with his crew. These humans were unlike anything in their experience. They had superior tactics, innovative technology, and most puzzling, they showed humility in victory. Captain Harris, Vaxrill said finally, the Karathi Empire has existed for 3,000 years. We have encountered many species. None have fought like you. None have shown your skill. Thank you. We've learned from many conflicts. Perhaps too many. You fight each other often? We used to. Now we try to talk first, fight only when necessary. Vaxrill's scales shifted to bright green, a color of surprise and interest. You choose peace over war? War is wasteful. Peace allows growth. These words struck Vaxrill deeply. The Karathi Empire had expanded through conquest for millennia. Peace had always seemed like weakness to them, but this small ship had just taught them otherwise. Captain Harris, Vaxrill said slowly, the Karathi Empire would like to learn more about humans, about your technology, your tactics, your philosophy. Harris looked around his bridge. His crew nodded encouragement. We would like to learn about the Karathi Empire as well, Commander. Perhaps we can turn this misunderstanding into something better. Yes, Vaxrill agreed. Something better. But Captain, Your species will change the galaxy. Of this I am certain. Both ships floated in space, damaged but no longer enemies. Around them, stars that had witnessed countless conflicts now watched the beginning of something new. Two species, so different, yet similar, had found each other through battle and chosen understanding over destruction. The war was over. The alliance had begun. Word spread quickly through Karathi space. Emergency broadcasts crackled across communication networks, reaching every military outpost, every colony world, every ship in the vast empire. The message was simple, but shocking. A single human vessel had outfought the Sovereign Fist, one of their most advanced warships. In the capital system, the Karathi Emergency Council convened within hours. Ancient leaders gathered in the Great Hall, their scales shifting through colors of concern and disbelief. Emergency Commander Zarvix addressed the assembly. Fellow Karathi, we must update our threat assessments. This species called humans cannot be dismissed as minor concerns. Commander Vaxril's report is clear. They possess technology and tactics beyond any we have encountered. How is this possible? Asked Elder Caxrun, her scales nearly white with age. Our empire has dominated this region for 3 millennia. How does a young species pose such a threat? According to Commander Vaxril's analysis, they develop rapidly through constant internal conflict. Their entire culture is built on innovation through competition and war. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The concept was alien to Karathi thinking. Their empire had grown through overwhelming force and superior technology, not through endless internal struggle. What do you recommend? Elder Caxrun inquired. We update their classification from minor concern to approach with caution. Any Karathi vessel encountering humans should attempt communication first, show of force second. The council voted unanimously. Across the empire, military protocols changed. Humans were now classified as potential allies, not automatic threats. Meanwhile, in human space, Captain Harris filed his report to UN Command. Admiral Patricia Lee reviewed the incident from her office on Luna Base, Earth's primary military command center. Her aide, Commander Jack Wilson, stood at attention as she read. Captain Harris engaged an unknown alien warship, defeated it using innovative tactics, then established first contact and potential diplomatic relations, she summarized. All in a single day's work. Yes, Admiral. The crew performed exceptionally. Lee stood and looked out at the blue-green Earth through her window. This changes everything, Jack. We're not alone, and we're certainly not weak, but we also need to be prepared for more misunderstandings. Authorization for new first contact protocols, Admiral? Approved. Communication first, weapons only for defense. We want to avoid another firefight if possible. She turned back to the report. Send this up the chain to Earth Command, and Jack, arrange full honors for Captain Harris and the crew of the Defiant. They've earned it. 6 months passed. The first formal diplomatic meeting took place on a neutral station, hastily constructed at the boundary between Karathi and human space. Representatives from both sides gathered, translators humming softly between conversations. Captain Harris attended as the human military representative, accompanied by Ambassador Sarah Mitchell. Commander Vaxril came with the Karathi delegation. When the two commanders met, their greeting was formal but warm. Captain Harris, Vaxril said, his scales showing bright gold, a sign of respect and friendship among his people. My ship bears scars from our encounter. They remind us daily of human ingenuity. Harris smiled. Commander Vaxril, your ship tested our limits too. We learned much from that battle. As did we. Perhaps too much. The meetings lasted 3 days. Cultural exchanges were arranged. Technology sharing agreements were discussed carefully. Military cooperation was explored with caution. The most significant development came from an unexpected source. During a break, young Karathi scientist Velnax approached human engineer Dr. Mark Casey. Your stealth technology, Velnax said hesitantly. It uses principles we never considered. light absorption rather than reflection. Could I learn more? Dr. Casey looked at Velnax with surprise, then smiled. Of course. And perhaps you could show me your energy weapon designs? We've never seen anything quite like them. This simple exchange sparked what became known as the Innovation Exchange Program. Scientists and engineers from both species began sharing knowledge, not as a formal treaty obligation, but out of genuine curiosity and respect. Within a year, the first joint human Karathi space station was approved for construction. Within 2 years, the first mixed-species crews began training together. The changes affected military doctrine on both sides. Karathi officers studied human battle tactics, incorporating improvisation and creative thinking into their rigid structures. Human strategists learned from Karathi experience, adding long-term planning to their adaptive approach. But the most profound changes were cultural. Young Karathi began questioning their empire's expansion-focused history. If humans could achieve so much in so little time, what else was possible beyond conquest? Human philosophers, meanwhile, found new perspectives in Karathi records of 3 millennia of galactic civilization. 3 years after the initial encounter, joint patrols became common in border regions. When Captain Harris, now Admiral Harris, reviewed patrol reports, he often smiled at the names listed. Human and Karathi officers working side by side, ships flying in formation that would have seemed impossible just a few years before. Other species in the galaxy took notice. The alliance between a new, innovative species and an ancient empire created ripples throughout known space. Some viewed it with suspicion, others with interest, but all with respect. When the Drex Collective threatened mining colonies near the Andromeda border, they retreated quickly upon detecting joint human Karathi patrol signatures. Word had spread. These allies combined the best of both worlds, human creativity with Karathi experience, human adaptability with Karathi power. 5 years after that first encounter, Captain Ryan Kelly, now commanding his own vessel, received an interesting communication while on patrol. His tactical officer, a young Karathi named Zilvex, looked up from his console. Captain, we're receiving a distress signal. Unknown vessel, design not matching any in our database. Kelly smiled. First contact protocols, Mr. Zilvex. Full communication attempt, peaceful approach. We've learned our lesson about assumptions. Aye, Captain. Beginning wide spectrum broadcast. As the ship changed course toward the distress signal, Kelly thought about how much had changed. The galaxy felt smaller now, more connected. What had started with a sensor anomaly and a firefight had grown into something much larger. The universe was vast and full of unknown species. But humanity and the Karathi Empire had proven that misunderstandings could become friendships, battles could become alliances, and fear could transform into respect. In the depths of space, among stars that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, something new was growing. Not through conquest or domination, but through understanding and cooperation. And both species, in their own way, prepared to face whatever wonders or dangers the galaxy might hold next. The story that began with alien sensors detected a human warship had become something neither side had expected, a bridge between worlds, built on mutual respect and curiosity. The future, vast and uncertain, now seemed less threatening and more promising than either species had dared to hope.